The storm outside howled against the windows of Eddie's Roadhouse diner, but inside, the tension was worse. The place smelled of smoke, beer, and fried onions, the kind of joint where broken souls came to forget the world. At the far end of the counter, a young waitress named Clara worked quietly, her hands trembling slightly as she refilled a coffee cup. She kept her eyes down, never meeting anyone's gaze for too long, as if she carried a secret she didn't want anyone to see. Her uniform was old, a little loose on her thin frame, and though she smiled when customers looked, her eyes told a story of deep sadness and pain. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring you more stories that touch hearts and remind the world what it means to be human. That night, a group of bikers thundered in, shaking the door as they entered. Their leather jackets glistened with rain, patches stitched across their backs, Steel Serpent's Motorcycle Club. The crowd grew quiet. Everyone knew them, tough men with scarred knuckles and heavy boots who rarely smiled. They carried an aura that warned others to keep their distance. But among them was one who didn't quite fit the mold, a tall man with gray streaks in his beard and eyes that seemed too thoughtful for the chaos around him. His name was Reed. Clara forced a shaky smile as she approached their table. "Evening, what'll it be?" she asked, her voice polite, though her hands clutched her notepad a bit too tightly. The men smirked and made their usual teasing remarks, the kind that made her blush uncomfortably. But Reed just stared quietly, noticing the way her smile faded the moment she turned away. There was something fragile about her, like glass that had been dropped too many times but still somehow held its shape. As the night wore on, the bikers laughed, drank, and told stories of roads and scars. Clara moved between tables, wiping counters, trying to stay invisible. But when one of the younger bikers, a man named Troy, made a crude joke and grabbed her arm, she froze. Her eyes filled with panic as she tried to pull away, but the sudden movement caused the thin fabric of her shirt to rip at the shoulder. The sound tore through the silence of the bar, gasps filled the room. The jukebox stopped mid-song. Everyone turned toward the sound, toward Clara, her shirt torn, her face pale with fear. But before anyone could say a word, Reed stood up, his chair scraping against the floor with a growl. He grabbed Troy by the collar and shoved him against the wall, his voice low and dangerous. "You don't touch people like that." The others started to rise, ready for a fight, but Reed's glare made even the toughest of them hesitate. The room trembled with tension, and then, as Reed turned toward Clara to check if she was okay, he froze. Under the ripped fabric, on Clara's shoulder and upper arm, were deep, discolored scars, long, twisted lines that told a story of pain far worse than anything in that bar. Some looked like burn marks, others like old cuts. For a moment, no one breathed. Reed's anger melted into shock, and then sorrow. The room that had been loud and brash minutes ago now felt heavy with silence. Clara quickly tried to cover herself, tears forming in her eyes, whispering apologies as if she had done something wrong. But Reed stepped forward, gently placing his jacket around her shoulders. His voice, usually rough, softened. "You don't need to hide that," he said. "Not from anyone." Everyone in the diner stared, the weight of the moment sinking in. The same men who once joked crudely now looked down, ashamed. Reed turned to Troy, his voice trembling with restrained fury. "You owe her more than an apology, you owe her respect." Troy's bravado disappeared. He muttered something that sounded like "sorry" before slipping out of the bar with his head lowered. Clara tried to step back, clutching the jacket, her voice shaking as she said, "It's fine, really, it's just old stuff." But Reed looked at her with eyes full of understanding. "Scars mean you survived," he said softly. "They don't make you less, they make you stronger." The words hit her harder than she expected. For years, she had lived in fear, hiding those marks, reminders of the house fire that had taken her family and left her scarred both inside and out. The world had not been kind. People whispered. Some stared. Most just looked away. But for the first time, someone saw her and didn't flinch. Wordlessly, she nodded, her tears falling silently as she smiled for the first time that night, a real smile, fragile but genuine. The other customers, who had watched everything unfold, began to clap softly. It wasn't loud or dramatic, it was slow, respectful, filled with emotion. Even the bartender wiped his eyes. The bar, once noisy and indifferent, had been transformed by one simple act of compassion. Reed sat back down after walking her to the kitchen, making sure she was okay. The rest of the bikers stayed quiet. When Clara came out later, still wearing his jacket, Reed left a thick envelope under his empty beer glass. It wasn't just payment, it was a donation. Enough to help her finally move out of the rundown motel she'd been living in since the fire. As he left, he looked back once more and said, "Keep going, kid. The world needs people who still smile after the storm." Weeks later, a new sign appeared on the front of the diner, Clara's Place. The owner, Eddie, had retired and handed the business to her after seeing how much she meant to everyone. The bikers became regulars, not as troublemakers, but as protectors. They'd sit quietly, always respectful, and every time Reed visited, Clara would hand him coffee on the house, smiling wide. Her scars never bothered her again. They became a part of her story, a story that changed others too, and that night, whenever the locals spoke about the biker who ripped the waitress's shirt, it wasn't with scandal or judgment, it was with awe. Because what he revealed that night wasn't her weakness, but her strength. He didn't expose her pain, he freed her from it. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in kindness, redemption, and the strength to heal, please take a second to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. These small actions help us keep spreading stories that remind the world to care, to notice, and to never judge too quickly. Speech balloon special request. Comment below with the words, "Kindness still exists," if you believe that compassion can change lives, because tonight, it truly did. As the last lights dimmed in Clara's Place, the sound of motorcycles faded into the night, not as symbols of fear, but as guardians of a story that proved one powerful truth: sometimes, the hardest battles are invisible. And the greatest heroes are the ones who choose to see beyond the scars.